Please don't let me down. I'm innocent, innocent, innocent." These were the final words of Cameron Todd Willingham before Texas executed him in 2004 for allegedly setting a fire that killed his 3 young daughters. 9 months later, a scientific report landed on the governor's desk proving what Willingham had maintained all along. The fire that took his children's lives wasn't arson. It was a tragic accident.
My little girl was crying, "Daddy, Daddy." When I woke up, the whole house was in smoke.
The report was ignored. The execution had already been carried out. As renowned fire investigator Gerald Hurst put it, Texas executed a man for a crime that never occurred. This isn't a movie. This isn't a mistake that can be undone. This is the American justice system. December 23, 1991, 2 days before Christmas in Corsicana, Texas, Cameron Todd Willingham, a 23-year-old unemployed mechanic, was home with his 3 daughters, 2-year-old Amber and 1-year-old twins Carmen and Cameron. His wife Stacy had gone out to buy Christmas presents. At 10:42 a.m., neighbors heard Willingham screaming. Flames were pouring from the windows of his small home. By the time firefighters arrived, the house was engulfed. Willingham was outside, hysterical, having to be physically restrained from running back in. He had suffered burns to his face, arms, and chest. His hair was singed. His bare feet were cut from breaking the front window in a desperate attempt to reach his children. Inside, firefighters found the bodies of all 3 children. Amber was in her bedroom. The twins were in the room they shared. 4 days later, as the community mourned 3 young lives lost, investigators were already building a case against their father. Within hours of the fire, before the children were even buried, investigators had decided this was no accident. Deputy Fire Marshal Manuel Vasquez, a veteran investigator, identified what he called clear signs of arson. Puddle patterns on the floor, which he claimed indicated an accelerant, crazed glass on the windows, which he said was caused by rapid heating, multiple points of origin, suggesting a deliberately set fire. 2 weeks after burying his children, Willingham was arrested and charged with capital murder. Prosecution's theory? Willingham had deliberately set the fire to kill his children, possibly to cover up abuse or simply because they were in his way. Neighbors reported that Willingham seemed more concerned about his car than his children, a claim later contradicted by multiple witnesses who saw his desperate rescue attempts. The prosecution's case was bolstered by Johnny Webb, a jailhouse informant who claimed Willingham confessed to him while in jail. Webb, a drug addict facing his own felony charges, would later recant his testimony. What the jury never fully heard: Willingham's injuries were consistent with rescue attempts. Neighbors had physically restrained him from running back into the burning house multiple times. In August 1992, Willingham went on trial for his life in Navarro County. Fire Marshal Vasquez testified with absolute certainty. The fire was intentionally set by human hands. He claimed his investigation had eliminated all accidental causes. The prosecutor painted Willingham as a sociopath who killed his children for convenience, citing a psychologist who never even examined Willingham. Willingham's court-appointed attorney had no experience with arson cases and no budget to hire independent fire experts. The defense called only one witness. After deliberating for less than 2 hours, the jury found Willingham guilty of capital murder. When asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Willingham maintained his innocence. "I would never hurt my children. I love them more than anything in this world." The judge sentenced him to death by lethal injection. As he was led from the courtroom, Willingham turned to his wife Stacy and said, "I didn't do this. Please believe me." For 12 years, Willingham sat on death row, filing appeals and begging for someone to review the evidence. In January 2004, just weeks before Willingham's scheduled execution, renowned fire scientist Dr. Gerald Hurst agreed to review the case. What Hurst found shocked him. The entire case was based on outdated fire investigation methods that had been scientifically disproven. The puddle patterns were actually caused by a phenomenon called flashover, where intense heat causes everything in a room to ignite simultaneously. The crazed glass was created by rapid cooling from fire hoses, not rapid heating from accelerants. The multiple points of origin were common in accidental fires, especially with flashover. Hurst's conclusion was unequivocal. There's not a single item of evidence in this case which suggests that the fire was arson. This was a tragic, accidental fire. Hurst's report was sent to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles and to Governor Rick Perry's office days before the scheduled execution. The board unanimously denied clemency without commenting on the new evidence. Governor Perry, who had the power to grant a 30-day stay, declined to intervene. Dr. Hurst later said, "The most basic principles of science were violated. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a catastrophic failure of the entire system." February 17, 2004, after 12 years proclaiming his innocence, Willingham's time had run out. For his final meal, he requested a steak, French fries, and iced tea. In his cell, he wrote a final statement to his ex-wife Stacy. "I have never stopped loving you. You're the only woman I have ever loved. I am innocent of these charges." At 6 p.m., witnesses were seated, among them journalists, prison officials, and family members of both Willingham and his deceased children. At 6:20 p.m., Willingham was led into the execution chamber. He was strapped to the gurney and IVs were inserted into both arms. Given a chance for final words, Willingham looked at his ex-wife's family and said, "The only statement I want to make is that I am an innocent man convicted of a crime I did not commit. I have been persecuted for 12 years for something I did not do. From God's dust I came, and to dust I will return, so the earth shall become my throne." At 6:30 p.m., the lethal injection began. 6:48 p.m., Cameron Todd Willingham was pronounced dead. The state of Texas had carried out what many experts would later call the execution of an innocent man. In August 2004, just months after Willingham's execution, the Chicago Tribune published an investigative report featuring interviews with leading fire scientists who all agreed the evidence used to convict Willingham was based on outdated, discredited methods. In 2005, the Texas Forensic Science Commission began investigating the case. Their hired expert, Craig Baylor, concluded that the original fire investigation was so flawed that a finding of arson could not be sustained. Days before Baylor was scheduled to present his findings publicly, Governor Perry replaced the commission chairman and 2 other members. The investigation was effectively shut down. In 2014, the final piece of evidence against Willingham collapsed when jailhouse informant Johnny Webb recanted his testimony. In a sworn affidavit, Webb admitted he lied about Willingham confessing to him in jail. Webb stated that prosecutor John Jackson had promised him a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. Documents later revealed that Jackson had indeed secured Webb's early release while maintaining publicly that no deal existed. The prosecutor was charged with misconduct by the State Bar of Texas in 2015 for withholding evidence and using false testimony to secure Willingham's conviction. The Willingham case isn't isolated. The Innocence Project has identified at least 50 arson convictions based on the same outdated forensic methods. 21 of those convicted have been exonerated. Others remain in prison. Some, like Willingham, have been executed. Dr. John Lentini, one of America's leading fire investigators, puts it bluntly. There are people who are in prison and who have been executed based on junk science. Since Willingham's execution, Texas has put 130 more people to death. How many were convicted using similarly flawed evidence? Supreme Court Justice Anton Scalia once wrote that there has not been a single case, not one, in which it is clear that a person was executed for a crime he did not commit. The Willingham case may well be that case. Cameron Todd Willingham's last words, his declaration of innocence, appear to have been true, according to modern science and the recantation of the key witness against him. Yet no official acknowledgement of his potential innocence has ever been made by the state of Texas. 3 young lives were lost in that fire. Then a 4th was taken by the state. As fire expert Gerald Hurst said, "The tragedy is not just that an innocent man was executed. The tragedy is that this was completely preventable." This investigation took months of research, interviews with fire scientists, and examination of court records. If you believe in uncovering the truth behind America's most disturbing wrongful executions, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Next week, we examine the shocking case of Carlos de Luna. executed for a murder committed by another man with the same name who lived just blocks away. Join our community demanding accountability from our justice system, because sometimes the evidence that matters most is the evidence examined too late.